So was this guy Max Yearick the real assassin? Have we been being lied to and manipulated the entire time? Let's find out. Hey folks, Gary here with Paramount. And ever since, I would say probably a week or so after July 13th, I started getting emails, messages, comments on a guy named Max Yearick. And, started getting all kinds of pictures and other things indicating that, that was the guy that was killed on the roof. And it wasn't Thomas Crooks. At first, I completely blew it off. I think we see a lot of these types of things typically happen around any sort of mass shooting or other event like that. A lot of bad information at the beginning, it usually sorts itself out. But this is one that has continued to persist. And the reason for that really is because we still haven't gotten a lot of additional information other than what we got in the first couple of weeks. We've seen a trickle of information come out from the FBI, from different body cam footage. We even got new body cam footage that came out yesterday. I've been going through that. We're gonna do an analysis of that as well and see if we got any real new information. So we're left with a couple of problems. Number one, the information void. We don't have enough conclusive evidence to convince anybody of anything. And then the other factor that leads to confusion and distrust is, we have a federal government that continually lies to us. So regardless if we're talking about, a huge conspiracy, a small conspiracy, or whatever else, we have a government that continually lies to us and manipulates information so that at a minimum, it's going to hide their responsibility or their culpability in what takes place. They're in cover your ass overdrive, right? We know that. So given all those factors, what we have is a lot of room for conjecture to run wild, for imaginations to run wild. And it also leaves a lot of room for us to be manipulated through different sources, whether they be political sources, people just out there having fun and getting a kick out of, coming up with different theories and all these other things. We as Americans have to become more skeptical, more discerning, and more careful about, what we believe and understand that there's all these different elements out there trying to deceive us for one reason or another. The other thing I'm going to cover at the end of this video is the terminal ballistic effects or the conjecture behind the terminal ballistic effects of the person deceased on that roof. Essentially they're saying because his teeth were blown forward, I don't even know where they get that fact, but let's say that is true. His teeth were blown forward, so therefore an impact had to come from the rear, and therefore that's proof of a conspiracy or additional shooters or whatever else. I'm gonna cover that at length at the end of this video. But going back to the theory that is not Thomas Crooks on the roof, that is Max Yearick, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna present to you the information that I found in the way that they're presented to prove their case of this. And then I'm gonna go back and we're gonna kind of analyze that a little bit. And at the end of this, you determine what you think is true or not. So there's absolutely no chance that this video will be monetized. That's another thing. Look, YouTube, AKA Google, is not a friend of the First Amendment, and they're not a friend of you getting to the truth. Who they are a friend of and who they're covering for constantly is the United States government. We definitely have an entire media industry that is absolutely colluding with the US government to present facts to us, the American people, in a way that they want them presented. And Google is a major part of that, and therefore YouTube is a major part of that. They're gonna demonetize this video without a doubt because of the things that we're showing, because you, the American people, are gonna be too shocked by the truth, right? They're trying to shield you from the truth for your own protection. I think that is un-American to say the least. So what that means when they demonetize these videos is that it's just not gonna get pushed in the algorithm. So, definitely share this stuff. Also, we gotta stop watching YouTube. I don't care who you are or what your politics are. The truth is what's important. The American people deserve the truth. They're big boys and girls. They can handle the truth. And I highly suggest that you start watching Rumble. We have been moving more and more of our content to Rumble for that very reason, but the fact of the matter is that Rumble is not as user-friendly. It's not as user-friendly for you, the viewer. It's definitely not as user-friendly for the creator. And there's clearly not as many people over there. But all those things were true for YouTube at one time. We start moving more content, more views, over to Rumble. It's going to get better. It's going to get more streamlined, and hopefully they stay true to their principles of being a friend of the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. Hey folks, Gary here with Paramount, cutting in here for a second. So I posted this video. I expected this video to be completely demonetized, but not only was it demonetized, it was restricted, which means it's not going to reach anybody, not 1/10 of what it would normally reach. So I went through this video. I've removed all the pictures that would possibly cause any restriction. But the point here is go watch the full unedited version on Rumble. YouTube doesn't want you to have the truth. They don't want anything substantive talked about, whether it's this or anything else. They collude with the government and they have a narrative that they're pushing, and this just goes to further prove that point. So we got to get more people over to Rumble. Definitely like, subscribe here on this channel so we can get this message out because the majority of people are on YouTube. But we got to get views over to Rumble. We got to get people over to Rumble, and we got to quit sending all of our money, all our views, and everything else on YouTube because they are not a friend of your rights. They're not a friend of the First Amendment. They're not a friend of the Second Amendment. I mean, what they did to suppress voices during COVID they should be prosecuted for it, in my opinion. So, we got to quit rewarding them for what I consider completely un-American behavior. Censorship has no place in this country. Let the people decide, and this has got to stop. Anyways, like, subscribe, all those things on this video so that we can continue to push videos out and continue to push this message out. But please start watching most of the content over on Rumble, not just my channel, everybody. Get over to Rumble. Anyways, enjoy the rest of the video. Go watch the full thing on Rumble so it makes more sense. So here's one of the videos. And by the way, speaking of that, Google's also suppressed a lot of this information, pictures and things like that. Where I found a lot of this was over on X. You can start doing searches in X and you get a lot more information, pictures and videos on X than you ever will on Google and many of the other search engines. So right here we have 3 pictures. One is of Maxwell Yearick, supposedly from a mugshot. Then we have the alleged dead shooter. And then we have Thomas Crooks. One of the real frustrating things about this that I think we need to pay attention to is that we keep getting these pictures of Thomas Crooks. It looks like he's in like 8th grade. The fact that we have no updated pictures and more recent pictures, there are definitely more recent pictures that we could be taking a look at and analyzing and comparing, but those have not been made available to us, and I think that's intentional, and I don't have a good reason for you. So looking at these 3 pictures, the implication here is, even with the post I went with this, was that, this person that's dead is definitely not Thomas Crooks. I've even seen a couple that actually point out detailed comparison. Okay, his nose is different, his jawline is different, these types of things. Here we have a very similar picture, but the blood has not been removed, and we can kind of see what's going on there. Here's a 3rd picture, and it says Maxwell Yearick, distinctive dark spot on the right side of the neck. We see what looks like a single mole or something down there on the neck that's highlighted with a circle. And then we see 2 dots there. I don't really understand why we're saying this because it looks like 2 versus 1. It looks very different to me. Also, I think that there's a very good chance this might be, blood, dried blood. Could be wrong. I don't know. On the right-hand side, we have a picture of Crooks. That is a screenshot taken from the BlackRock commercial, and we don't see any sort of markings over there. Now here's a video presentation that I found on X, and I think this covers the entire theory of why people think that it was Max Yearick is the assassin and not Thomas Crooks. All right, so we watched that video, and one thing I think we need to do real quick is kind of define some physiology here. So the top part of the ear that we're talking about up here is called the helix. You all didn't know that you were going to get an anatomy class with this video as well, so you're welcome. So this right here, this outer fold of the ear is called the helix, and then this inner portion that he pointed out is the antihelix, and then we have the lobule. That's kind of what we need to know, and when we compare what we're looking at with Thomas Crooks and his anatomy and the comparison that we have with this. So when he starts drawing on this ear and starts pointing out the similarities, the alleged or supposed similarities, I think what we're watching in real time is the power of suggestion, right? Suggestion is used all the time in everything from, magic shows to psychological warfare to psychological operations to propaganda, all these things. And we've always, again, this guy's telling you what you're seeing. So before we get into that, let's even take a look at another picture that I've seen floating around the internet that is doing a comparison and suggesting that what we're looking at right here in the bottom of Crooks's ear is a scar from a medical procedure for closing up the ear gauges. And we see this line here. I can't tell what that is exactly. To me, that looks a lot like blood. We see that blood is kind of drained down into his ear. We see blood over here that's went across this right here, the antihelix. And I do personally think this is blood. But let's take a look at this scar pattern. And if we look down here at the bottom left-hand corner, we see an ear gauge that has been closed up, and we see this vertical scar. We see another one here, this vertical scar just like this. We see one here, and we see that the scarring is a little more horizontal. It's off to like a 45, and we see the same thing over here where we have scarring at a vertical pattern. None of the scarring looks the same as this. If this is indeed a scar, why is this going from the bottom of the ear? It doesn't go all the way up to this little notch. I'd have to look back at our anatomy chart to see what this notch is, but it actually goes toward the outer edge of the ear, and it's much more horizontal than any of these. So there's that. Now let's look at what he has to say about the rest of the ear. All right, let's look at that specifically. Look at the difference in curvature from this ear and how much thicker that is and how much more quickly it terminates and goes flat in this area. Also, look at the way this ear is shaped right here. We see the ear on the right, which is supposedly Max Yearick's ear. We see this goes directly into an eardrum. We see that ear canal on this ear is much lower. It doesn't look anything like that. And then finally, what I want to look at is the helix. We're going to talk about this particular very unique shape and how thin the helix is on the top of this ear versus this ear. This is much thicker. This is much more typical of what we see in a normal shaped ear. This goes and gets really thin very quickly. And of course, we have these strange facets on the ear that, quite frankly, I've never seen before. And, I've done a lot of work in surveillance and counter surveillance. And one of the things that we are constantly looking for and trained in is making sure that we're seeing these unique characteristics from ears and other things that are not going to be hidden. Those characteristics that aren't going to be hidden with a hat. We're constantly looking at the ears and other identifying physiology that's going to distinguish one person from the next. Or if we have a picture of someone that we're looking for, it's going to help us to confirm if the person that we're looking at is one and the same or a different person altogether. So, this is something that stood out to me right away. Now, we don't have any updated pictures of Thomas Crooks, none that I've seen other than a few really pixelated images that we see him climbing up on the roof. Not very good imagery to say the least, but let's look at some pictures that we do have. Here's a screenshot that I was able to pull from the BlackRock commercial. And let's zoom in on here. Look what we have here. We have that very same strange faceted ear. I've never seen where we have like this very sharp angle here and then another very sharp angle pointing downward here. Never seen that. But we also see that we have a very thin helix up here that thins out very rapidly and then a very low ear canal down here. That ear canal on that other picture is much higher. Also, we see right here on that antihelix that it is very curved and then terminates. There's not like a portion of cartilage that continues to go vertical up here like we see in the supposed picture of Max Yearick. If we're going to base positive ID on just the ear, man, there is a really strong case in the other direction that this guy is trying to push us in. That this ear that we're looking at here is very similar, if not a direct match from the person that is dead on the roof. So now let's look at some other characteristics. And this picture is the highest resolution picture that I could find. It's still not great, but some of the other things that people have talked about and pointed out that are very similar between Max Yearick and the person that we see deceased on the roof is eyebrows and facial hair and some other structures. So if we look at this person on the left, their eyebrows. Those are very thin eyebrows. Very, very different from Max Yearick's eyebrows. We don't see this peak, I don't know what this is called, here on this eyebrow like we do with that one. Very, very different eyebrow structure altogether. Then we come down here and we look at the facial hair pattern. We see the facial hair pattern on Max Yearick. It is much more dense than the person here on the left. The facial hair pattern is completely different. Now, one of the things that I've seen people talk about, the shape of the lips, and that, you know, he definitely has this kind of high point here in the center. I'm sure somebody smart in there can tell me what that is. But the fact of the matter is this person's just been shot, and we're going to talk about the terminal ballistics of that because of the hydrostatic shock wave that's going to go through a person's face and tissue and head when they get shot with 300 Win Mag. So this is what we're looking at right here. And to me, you might be able to make an argument that this is not Thomas Crooks, but what I can almost certainly tell you is that this person here on the left is not this guy on the right. I mean, to me, it couldn't be more clear that this is, for whatever reason, this is a hoax and a fraud that's being pushed. I really think that people need to be careful with this, because if you want to hold the government accountable, what we're going to have is we're going to have multiple congressional hearings on this. Because when we have Republicans up there trying to make the case that we need to hold the Secret Service accountable, what the left is going to do is they're going to start presenting all of these conspiracy theories and very easily proven that they are wrong conspiracy theories, and they're going to undermine and delegitimize any effort to hold the government accountable. You know, everything that's said about this is going to be turned into a conspiracy theory, and I mean that in the worst possible way, and delegitimize this entire investigation. So those of you that want to hold the government accountable, that want to make sure that the failures are not repeated, hopefully people are actually fired, they're prosecuted for gross incompetence, gross negligence. But what's going to happen is when we start presenting all this nonsense that's so easily proven to be incorrect, people that are presenting this, that are pushing these theories without any shred of evidence, that are nothing more than internet rumor, they are going to be the greatest defense against any possibility of actually holding the government accountable. So we need to be careful, and you need to stick to the evidence. And yes, we are going to have to exercise some patience and wait for more evidence to come out. So that's just another thing that we need to be aware of. All right, so now let's talk about the internet rumor and the things I keep seeing in the comments time and time again about, hey, you know what, this is conspiracy. He was not shot facing forward. He was shot in the back because his teeth blew out. Folks, you need to understand, well, let's talk about ballistics. So when we study ballistics, we're talking about there's three different types of ballistics. There's internal ballistics, what takes place inside the firearm before that round actually leaves the barrel. And then we have external ballistics, and that's the study of that projectile leaving the barrel and its entire flight pattern before it terminates into its target. That's external ballistics. And then we have the study of terminal ballistics, and that's what happens to the projectile and or the target when it terminates onto the target itself. But spreading these rumors that are based on pure conjecture and by a lot of people that know nothing about firearms and have no experience in this stuff, and they're just taking things they've seen in the movies and saying, oh, this is what would happen in the movie, so therefore this has to be some conspiracy. You know, that's not productive to anybody. But I'm telling you right now, all these rumors with the Democrats and the government being able to turn this or make this look like a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists coming up with these ideas is going to be the main defense. It's going to be the biggest blockade to the truth. So we need to be aware of that. We need to be careful and discerning about the information we consume, and definitely careful about the information that we share and try to push off as fact, because we're being deceived by a lot of different elements right now. So we need to be careful. All right, folks, so I hope this was helpful. I hope this was informative. If you have any questions, leave those down in the comments below. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that bell icon. We've had a major issue with people telling me that YouTube is unsubscribing them. And even though that they have hit the bell icon as a reminder or an alert for when we make new content, they're not getting those alerts. So pay attention to that. Make sure you stay subscribed and check back with us regularly, because we're trying to answer questions as quickly as information comes in. And then, of course, every Wednesday at 7 p.m., we have our live Dangerous Liberty podcast right here on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. So make sure you join us. You, the viewers, are always the special guests. We read your comments. We take your questions. We want you involved in the discussion, and we want you part of this community. Also, if you're not already, make sure you follow us on other social media sites. We do a lot of cool things on there. Also, down below in the description is a link to our newsletter. It's free. We don't spam you. We don't sell your information. There's also a link to our Patreon. If you'd like to support our work doing this stuff, we appreciate that support as well. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.